Hello, everybody. There was a interesting. Oh, come on, there we go. There was an interesting build on the Reddit today, and so I just wanted to make a short video demonstrating the interactions with it. It's going to be Shyvana with Frozen Heart. So we'll give ourselves some gold and we'll give ourselves some levels just because. Okay, so we just do some levels. And the way that it works is Frozen Heart has the Winter's Caress reduce the attack speed of nearby enemies by 20%. So if we put down a training dummy, you can see by the E how far away we are, which it doesn't really matter because once we have the Frozen Heart, you'll be able to see it obviously just by hovering the Frozen Heart. So let's go ahead and buy a Frozen Heart, and you can see the range. We actually are just outside of the range. So let's, right there. If you see the little snowflake icon above it, that means that Frozen Heart is now working. It's 700 units from your position. You get that little snowflake icon. So if we move away, it goes away. If we move in, it comes back. Right there. Okay, so the interaction that happens with Frozen Heart is that there are a couple of items that work off of being in combat. If we go ahead and just buy all of them so that we can talk about them, we're going to go with Riftmaker. And then we are going to go to the tank items and we're going to pick up a Jack Show. There was the MR, just an MR item, Unending Despair. And then there is a lethality item, which we may not buy. It's called Opportunity. So we won't buy this item realistically on Shyvana, but it still interacts with the Frozen Heart. So when we are not engaged with the Snowflake or at 700 units, then Unending Despair isn't ticking. And Jack Show isn't ticking, and Riftmaker isn't ticking, and Opportunity isn't ticking. If we move into the Snowflake, then you see that Unending Despair immediately fires off. It technically heals us and deals damage because Frozen Heart has detected somebody is here. It's put us in a combat state, and so because we are in a combat state, every 7 seconds Unending Despair will fire. Then you can see here that the Jack Show is also stacking. So when we are in combat, given that the Frozen Heart is interacting with a champion, Jack Show will begin its stacking. If we are out of combat, then it'll lose its stacks. Should lose its stacks. There it goes. So it lost its stacks, and when we come into combat, it starts stacking. Right? It's kind of a given. We are in combat, so it starts stacking. Now, you can see that, one, that was a little delayed. I'm not lagging, so I'm not really sure what that was. But you can see that Riftmaker isn't operating on its own. Riftmaker doesn't stack when it is solely the Riftmaker, or when it is solely the Jack Show. This is going to fire when we start dealing damage. That's where the Unending Despair comes in. I'm not saying this is what you would technically want to build, but when we are engaged with a champion and Unending Despair fires and deals damage, Riftmaker also fires because we have now begun dealing damage. So this is the broken state concept of Frozen Heart, is that it gives 70 armor, 20 ability haste, and reduces the attack speed of the enemies by 20%. The 20% attack speed happens when they are within 700 units of us. then it reduces the incoming damage of attacks by up to 15, capped at 20. That is auto attacks, but that isn't a function of the stacking. This is solely based on the fact that Frozen Heart is trying to find champions within 700 units of Shyvana. Then, obviously, Opportunity is also firing because after being out of combat, then we gain 7 lethality, and so it is trying to count down being out of combat, and it can't do that because we are continuously in combat with Frozen Heart and the Unending Despair firing off, which is, we're not going to build this, but it's just another item that gives like an alert. If you happen to play some kind of assassin or something with a Frozen Heart, this will give you an alert that this is happening. And why I say an alert is that if we TP to like a bush, and we are going to put a dummy in here, right? So you can see that there's a dummy in this bush, and it has the snowflake. When we are visible to the enemy, all of these things prop off because Frozen Heart is detecting that there's an enemy there. However, if we are out of the bush and we cannot see the enemy in the bush, then all of these things will be stagnant until right there. See how it fires off? It has detected bullshit bush cheese. Frozen Heart knows that there is an enemy here, and Unending Despair fires because it is now proccing damage off of the enemy. And then if we walk in and walk in and walk in and walk in, there goes the Riftmaker, and there goes our Opportunity. No bush cheese. This is what I mean by an alert, where you can see that Jackshow is fully stacked just simply by existing in this region. The Riftmaker took some time, but simply by existing in this region, I don't know when this falls off, out of combat. So if this exists, and I'm only using the Unending Despair to be a visual indicator, but you can see right there, and Jackshow starts stacking. We don't need the Unending Despair to start stacking Jackshow, but it's a larger indicator down here for the video. Or if people like to buy it, then buy it, build it, do whatever. But as a visual indicator for the video, Unending Despair fires, Opportunity fires, Riftmaker fires, and Jackshow fires when we get in a certain range, 700 units, and Jackshow is now fully stacked. So as like a secret sweeper for bush cheese or invisible champions, if you see Jackshow start stacking, you know somebody is in this radius. Somebody is here, and that is the broken state of Frozen Heart, that it is searching 700 units around you at all times, and you're going to be fully stacked the moment somebody walks in this region. Then if we just walk into here, Riftmaker begins stacking. It doesn't fully stack because we're not in combat the entirety of the time. It is stacking off of Unending Despair. That's what Riftmaker is stacking off of right at this moment, is just Unending Despair firing and doing damage, and so it gives us the stacks. But it's another visual indicator that somebody was in this region. So if you have Frozen Heart and you have Jackshow, you're going to have that visual indicator all the time. If somebody is there, you'll see it stack and you'll see it hold its stacks. If you are walking through with Riftmaker, you'll see it proc and you'll see it start to stack, and you know somebody is here. And then if we are, obviously seeing an enemy, then it's just going to fire and it's just going to stack, and then obviously we just attack like a normal person. But as the bush cheese type of alert, you can see it through the fog of war. You can see it into bushes. You can see invisible champions just simply by the alert here that you've begun stacking for technically no reason. So that is the functional usage of Frozen Heart, even though it has mana that we're not going to use. The item itself is very strong, and it has broken bullshit. So that's the concept behind Frozen Heart, Shyvana.